All right, in this segment, I want to go over the differences and variations in doing caliber conversions. It really breaks down into 4 areas. So the first one, what we call the caliber conversion, is going to be on the press itself. It involves the shell plate, the case feed ram, and the case feed adapter. The second one is going to be the case feeder. That involves the shell plate, some springs and spring perches, the output assembly and the drop tube, as well as the case feed platen. The third one is going to be the bullet feeder conversion, and that involves the shell plate, the output spring, and the die dropper assembly. The last one is converting the priming system from a small to a large, and that's going to involve a few items that we'll go over on the table now. Okay, so as you can see, I've laid out the parts needed for the conversions to give you an idea of what's going to be needed or involved in changing over. So going right to the priming system, I'll name these components. We've got the ramp cover, and so that's designated as a large versus small. The disc assembly, which you'll find the number 2 signifies large, the number 1 is for small. This is the insert, which goes underneath the disc, and this one is very visible because it's black, which signifies large, or silver, which signifies the small, as well as the large primer punch and bushing. And so these are all needed to convert from large to small, which we'll show you soon. Now moving over to the caliber conversion, this is something that I can show you right away. To convert this, you're going to want to remove the 4 bolts that hold our housing together. And so this, right on top, takes a 5/32 Allen, and on the bottom takes a 1/8. This is going to allow us to separate the 2 housings to access our case feed ram. So we'll go ahead and do that now so you can see the process. You can also use this as the guide to take it apart to clean it and re-grease it if you're performing maintenance. So with the 4 screws removed, I'm able to separate the 2 housings, and inside you will find the ram and the plunger spring. So to remove, we simply tip it out, perform any needed maintenance. You're going to change over to your new caliber. You're going to simply line up the spring in the back of the pocket, insert the new into the housing, and reverse procedure by putting this back together. Now on the top end, this is very simple as well. You're going to simply remove the 2 screws holding the adapter, and once this is completely removed, I am able to just loosen the front screw, which is designed to be swung open, to remove the entire adapter and install my new caliber. And again, I would just go ahead and reinstall, tighten everything back down, and I'm ready to go on the machine. So we will move over now to another very simple one, is going to be our bullet feeder conversion. As I said, it consists of the shell plate, which is easily removable and replaced, the output assembly, which there's only 2, there's a small and large, and the dropper. So the dropper consists of the die and the entire dropper assembly with switch. So by changing these components and then doing adjustments depending on the projectile being used, you've now converted your bullet feeder. Now the last one to be used is the case feeder. And so this one I wanted to point out. We've got our shell plate, which is held in by 3 screws in the center. You'll find that there is a deflection shield that's held on by 2 wing nuts that'll need to be removed. And then you can sneak this out underneath the springs. Specifically, when you're going from pistol to rifle, you're going to have some different outputs. And so this in particular is specific to a rifle output. You're going to be adding springs for rifle versus the pistol just has 1 simple spring on the outside. The variation or difference in how it's laid out. No, the pistol sits on the very outer edge and the rifle lays inside. It's going to require this deflector to make sure that it falls down in the correct fashion. The difference in the case feed platen is that this is designed for a bottleneck case, which in turn, as it comes around, the spring pushes on and allows it to orient correctly so it goes in the right fashion. This is a riser for the pole itself, and then here is the adapters for your output or drop tube assembly. And so please view the various pictures that we're going to supply with you so that you can easily convert from pistol to rifle or vice versa. All right, so in this section we are going to go over the primer conversion from a small to a large. This is going to give you some details that are going to be required and the process used to remove, change everything over, and replace all of these key components. So we'll start out right on the top and work our way down. Now you're going to need to remove a screw here, here, here. So there's 3 holding the cover on, as well as the 2 that hold the sensor. Now I've already done that, so I'm going to go ahead and lift this up and off and pull the ramp up and off as well, which is going to be kind of stuck on there firm. This is what changes from small to large. So we'll set that to the side. The next is going to be this cover, which I've already loosened, and we'll go ahead and finish fully removing it. Okay, now we'll set that off to the side. Next is going to be our disc assembly. So let's go ahead and loosen these 3 screws, which is going to allow us to remove the entire disc. Now this can also be done on the bench when the entire disc assembly is off, but I'll do it now just to show you how this all comes apart. So we'll set that to the side. Now this entire disc assembly is held on really at this point by 5 bolts. We have 2 located underneath the ramp adjustment. We have 1 on top, 1 below, and 1 holding the cam tire. So we'll start on the right and I'll work our way over. So first is a 9/64 Allen key to remove these 2. And next is a 5/32 to remove the 2 bolts holding the entire disc assembly to the core. When you remove this, you'll notice that one is slightly longer than the other. So please make note of that for when you go to reinstall it. Now the one on top, like I said, is slightly longer, and you'll see a shoulder on that bolt. We'll set those to the side. Now the last one is going to be holding on the cam tire. So we'll go ahead and remove that with a 1/8 Allen. And in most cases, because there's tension on it, you may need to drop the press in neutral or just jog down once to relieve the pressure off of the bolt. And take note, be careful, because there is a washer and there is a correct orientation. So we'll set that to the side in one piece. And now, with our shell plate removed, with everything else, I can lift straight up and off with the entire disc assembly. So we will set this to the side. And I can now change punch and spring. So we're going to go from small to large, and we'll drop that right back in. Now that I have my disc assembly ready, I'm going to take my 1/16 Allen, and the first thing I'll remove is the primer side plate. By removing these 2 screws, I can now lift that up and off and set to the side. The next are going to be the 5 screws that are holding the insert. So again, I will take my 1/16 Allen and remove these 5 screws. I can now lift my insert up and off away from the ramp and set that to the side. And the last piece is going to be my bushing. So this is for the small punch. We're going to now install the bushing for the large. We're going to take our large insert, install again, tipping it towards the ramp, reinstall our 5 screws, now we want to do this evenly so as to not over tighten one. So go around, install all 5, and then go back around the circle and retighten. We can now install our disc temporarily by putting the 3 bolts in loose, then installing our side plate with the 2 screws that we removed previously. All right, with that assembled, I can reinstall. So what I'm going to use as a guide is, if you look closely, this is where my primer punch will go. So I want to line that up right there. You may need to get down to look closely. Once that's lined up, go straight down with the disc assembly, and we're back in place. Now we're going to take the 2 bolts that are holding the disassembly to the press. And remember, the longer bolt goes on top and the shorter bolt come in through the bottom. Now we'll use our 5/32 to secure that. And I like to hold it firmly against the core or top plate while I tighten these. We're going to take our 1/8 Allen, and from underneath we're going to line up our index arm with our cam tire and the drive wheel. So this may require that you spin the drive wheel slightly to get it relined up again. Once you've got that, you simply tighten it all the way up. Reinstall the 2 screws holding the ramp adjustment from underneath the platform. At this point, we would want to reinstall the 3 screws holding our ramp cover on. The next, we would reinstall our primer call sensor. We would perform the shell plate reinstallation procedure, which can be found in our shell plate video. And we're going to do final adjustments by aligning the tool head down through the press before tightening the 3 bolts, as well as adjusting the primer side plate to the correct positioning. At this point, you've fully completed the conversion to a large priming system. Now, if you needed to go from large to small, it's exactly the same procedure, just reversing the components.